Hey everybody, my name's Matt Church and welcome to Observer Effect. And what I wanted to do in this series of videos is take a look at great presentations, and we'll use the internet to find them, and to point out some of the things that master public speakers are doing to set themselves apart from the ordinary presentation. If you haven't already got a copy of my book Speakership, co-written with my friends Sasha Coburn and Cole Fink, you can download a complimentary digital copy from my website at mattchurch.com. Just go to the books tab and you can read that. What I'd like to do in this video here is focus in on interaction and the idea of audience interaction. And we're going to use Ben Zander, who is a conductor. And he is just a brilliant example of how do you create audience engagement and interaction with the presenter. And it breaks some of the rules of public speaking beautifully so that what gets created is an energy or a buzz. When you watch this talk at TED.com, you're seeing an abridged version. It possibly went overtime. I was fortunate enough to see the whole presentation on a Blu-ray DVD. The company Thought Leaders that I founded in 2001 had the license to run TED in Australia for 3 years before the TEDx brand was created. So I got this Blu-ray DVD of the whole presentation. And the reason I bring that up is not just bragging rights, but rather that at the end, Ben was able to get a whole audience of deep thinkers up singing Ode to Joy. And to get that level of interaction in a room is almost impossible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through just a couple of highlights of this video. I'd love you to watch the whole thing. And maybe even if you watch the whole thing before you watch the rest of my video, you'd have a good idea. What we'll do is we'll just see. Let's see if I can offer some insights. So I'm at TED.com and full attribution to TED and everything they do. Let's go live with Ben Zander.
Probably a lot of you know the story of the two salesmen who went down to Africa in the 1900s. They were sent down to find if there was any opportunity for selling shoes. And they wrote telegrams back to Manchester. And one of them wrote, "Situation hopeless, stop, they don't wear shoes." And the other one wrote, "Glorious opportunity, they don't have any shoes yet." Now there's a...
So what Ben's been able to do is he's been able to start with a joke. And the thing about this joke is he's about to link it to the central theme of his message. With audience interaction, it's really important that from the very, very beginning, you don't do anything to or with the audience that doesn't link to your central theme. Glenn Capelli, a good friend of mine, an extraordinary speaker and educator in the space, says everything you do must make a point that links to your central theme. And you can see Ben demonstrating that masterfully right now. So he's about to link the story of the two salesmen to classical music, which is kind of his premise.
Similar situation in the classical music world, because there are some people who think that classical music is dying, and there are some of us who think you ain't seen nothing yet. And rather than go into statistics and trends and tell you about all the orchestras that are closing and the record companies that are folding, I thought we should do an experiment tonight. An experiment. Actually, it's not really an experiment because I know the outcome. But it's like an experiment. Now,
What Ben's doing is, by setting a joke, did you notice the first time he did the joke, the audience didn't laugh? And what he has is he has this intent to be dancing together with the audience. He doesn't want to dance alone. So he's incredibly patient about waiting for the audience to get the joke. Now, this is a very, very smart audience, and they also have what's called a TEDache. They've had continuous TED Talk after continuous TED Talk with extraordinary presenters and mind-blowing ideas. And so what he's got to do is set a new rhythm and cadence with the audience, and he's doing that very well. He's also waiting quite patiently, and it's in comedy, this is called waiting for the laugh. So if they don't laugh first time, sometimes you've just got to give the audience another opportunity to know that you were joking. Once again, as a conductor, I reckon a lot of this is just masterfully intuitive in Ben. And so what we're seeing is a master interactor and, for want of a better term, a manipulator of the interaction, or the ultimate term is the orchestration of that interaction, and that he is the conductor of that, which is exactly his role. So perfect. Shall we keep going? I think we should. Here we go.
Before we start, I need to do two things. One is I want to remind you of what a 7-year-old child sounds like when he plays the piano. Maybe you have this child at home. He sounds something like this.
Look at his head. Look at his head. And then listen to what he says about that in a minute. He's taking the audience into this narrative, physically embodying the story.
I see some of you recognize this child. Now, if he practices for a year and takes lessons, he's now 8 and he sounds like this. And then he practices for another year and takes lessons, now he's 9. And then he practices for another year and takes lessons, now he's 10.
And you're doing this with him without even knowing it.
At that point, they usually give up.
Good joke. But you get that he's entraining the audience
Now,
with his head, and we're all doing it.
If you waited for one more year, you would have heard this. Now, what happened was not maybe what you thought, which was he suddenly became passionate, engaged, involved.
So the trick to audience engagement and creating a conversation with your audience, if we just track what Ben's done so far, he started with humor. Then what he did is he linked that to his central theme. Then what he did is he got the audience like moving with him. And there are a number of ways to do this, but you want to engineer what's my equivalent. And it could be something, and the process is a process called ramping. So to start with the 2 salesmen story and to end with everybody singing Ode to Joy, that curve, that interaction curve goes from low, no risk to super, super high risk. And what a lot of people do is they go, I want the audience doing a high five, like they've been to some motivational speakers event. And they're like, yeah, let's get those corporate salespeople interacting. And they go, stand up, massage the person next to you. And then they do things like, hey, high five someone. And then they do things like, all right, let's sing this song. But they have not at all established the trust. They have not at all set up the conversational space. They haven't waited respectfully for the audience to join. And Ben is demonstrating all the way through this TED Talk from 2008 in Monterey, the power of interaction and ramped interaction. Now he's about to do a thing called divide and conquer. And this is what works so powerfully well with Myers-Briggs or LSI or star signs or, the DISC system by Wilson Learning, where you're dominant, interactive, social, and cautious. Or any kind of it could be who's from Newcastle. If you've ever been in a rock concert, Bono might come out and go, hello, Sydney, which says, I respect and know the audience I'm with. And he goes, who's from Manly Beach? And then the audience, can you imagine if he just did Sydney? That'd be extraordinary. And you see it in Boston Square Gardens. If you watch any of their things, they're talking about who's from Queens, who's from Yonkers, and they're doing the same thing. And what they're doing is trying to get the audience to tribally identify with category. Because if I can have a quick little tribal identity, and this is the heart of that evil identity politics, but if I can quickly identify with a tribe, I feel safe. And audience interaction is effectively me participating in public speaking, which is one of the greatest fears people have. And so this sense of tribal identity is super powerful and useful. Good. I was just checking that I was recording. I was. All right, so let's see if we can get to divide and conquer. And he'll split it into the types of people who appreciate classical music or not. And it doesn't really matter what your mechanism is. It's trying to put people, giving people the opportunity to self-select into boxes, even if they're fictitious.
Got a new teacher, he hit puberty or whatever it is. What actually happened was the impulses were reduced. Said the trouble with you is you're a 2-buttock player. Company into a one that probably 45 of you you about you. There are 1,600 people, I believe. My estimation is that probably 45 of you are absolutely passionate about classical music. You adore classical music. Your FM is always on that classical dial. And you have CDs in your car. And you go to the symphony and your children...
Okay, so category one, 45 of 1,600 people who love classical music.
Group. It's quite a small group. Then there's another group, bigger group. These are the people who don't mind classical music. You come home from a long day and you take a glass of wine and you put your feet
about
up a little
4.5 minutes when you're watching it.
Do any harm, right? That's the second
People
group.
who don't mind
Now,
classical
the
music.
third group. These are the people who never listen to classical music. It's just simply not part of your life. You might hear it like secondhand smoke at the airport, but and maybe a little bit of a march from Aida when you come into the hall, but otherwise you never hear it. That's probably the largest group of all. And then there's a very small group. These are the people who think they're tone deaf.
And he's just done a bell curve.
Number of people think they're
Love classical music,
Actually,
tone deaf. Either end.
Actually, you cannot be tone deaf. Nobody is tone deaf. If you were tone deaf, you couldn't change the gears on your car, in a stick shift car. You couldn't tell the difference between somebody from Texas and
now what he's doing by debunking tone deafness is doing a thing called social object theory, which we'll talk about in another video on the observer effect. But here, what I wanted to capture quickly in a couple of minutes with the extraordinary Ben Zander is, what does a world-class conductor do to create audience interaction? Because an orchestra is a whole bunch of disparate bits and instruments coming together to create music. And presenting, where you stand behind a lectern and deliver death by PowerPoint, is one style of presenting. But what I'd like to encourage everybody who becomes committed to the art of speakership is that they appreciate that dynamic interaction can be incredibly useful. Ramp it, use divide and conquer and other techniques, and watch Ben Zanders' full TED Talk so you get an idea of the power of interaction to move an audience.